Now, as a clarifier to the video that I posted about the Baphomet statue, I am equally on the side of the devil. Okay? In case you haven't gathered that. The idea of God that is held in opposition to this beautiful piece of artwork. I mean, regardless of how you feel or where you stand, which is to say how you feel about that statue, it is a beautiful piece of artwork. It was very well done, and the message that it points out, as far as the intention that it has, is undeniably beautiful. You can't deny it. I can over-exaggerate based on personal views the beauty of that, or the lack thereof. But as far as a pure piece of artwork, regardless of where you stand, look at how well composed it is. It is one of the best pieces of artwork I've ever seen. I will acquiesce to the fact that it's probably done more with computers than it is with people, but that's probably also part of the point if we look at that. Progression and separation at the same time. Progression as far as how we are naturally, and I mean artificially, meaning artifacts, meaning something that is man-made, regardless of whether or not we want to consider that thing natural. Artifacts can be anything, whether it's or the Great Pyramids or whatever. Something made by man, and that includes human children. Something made by humankind. That's a progression of that, which is part of the point I was trying to push forward before. I am on the side of those who built that statue, and I am on the side of those who are against that statue, who place, for all intents and purposes, an identical idol in opposition to that, and by which, besides which, that statue sits today. Again, and when I say the good fight and things like that in the other video, and by the way, when I'm talking about posts, I'm talking about a Facebook thing that spawned my necessity to post the last video, and hence this video. It is equally arguable. And again, this I'm hoping that I've made myself clear in the last video. It is equally objectionable for the Ten Commandments to be left there. Again, Baphometites, and I say again because I hope it was made clear in the last video, you should also, and I stuck with the demanding equality because that's, Satanists are humanists in a more human sense than monotheists are. Demand equality, and if you cannot get that, demand speciality, which is to say, demand that the Ten Commandments be torn down for the exact reason that they are demanding that the Baphomet be removed. Don't give up the good fight. Whatever you find that good fight to be, whether or not you're on one side or the other. And if you do acquiesce to the other side, how fucking dare you try and start this fight in the first place? Now, I am not on either side. Okay? I am against people fighting against things that they don't understand the necessity for. Please, for the love of all that, whoever you are, find holy, even if it's deemed to be unholy, or overmuch holy. Keep fighting that fight. Again, do not remove the thing you're fighting against. Heathens, remain heathens. And let the so-called righteous be. To the righteous, fight the good fight, but let the unholy be. And I'm telling you both. And I don't just mean strictly, I'm talking specifically about the holy versus the unholy, because this is what the argument's about. But as a small aside, and I'm trying to keep this video short, don't you dare try and remove the other for the sake of yourself. If you are true followers on either side of this Baphomet argument, then you should recognize the necessity for the other side of the argument to be visible. Otherwise, you have nothing to fight against, much less for, because you stand alone. And if you're alone, then you've accomplished your goal and have nothing to fight for, so you've lost. When God pretends to play God, he only reveals himself as the devil. If the devil is trying to do the job that the devil is presumed to do, then he already knows. And again, I'm not supposed to use the word he, because that's, and I tell myself that I should not use the word he or she, and it is, again, closer to the truth, but not. Again, language is inadequate. Remain true to yourselves. I beg you, both sides. But you cannot do that if the other side of the argument is gone. Keep it there. Both sides are saying the same thing, but from opposite ends of the same rainbow. And when I said we know which side will lose, I mean both sides will lose. Both sides will come back. Peaks and valleys. It will cycle back. Expect to lose. That being said, since it will cycle back, as it has many times before, and it will again, expect to win. You will both win. You will both lose. it will boil down to the core of the argument. Again, you're saying the same things. Admit that you are totally selfish. First off, do that, both sides. Secondly, admit that you are both right. As I said in the last video, both of you are on the same side as far as people. You have no further intention than to fully empower the person and to reveal to them that they are one with whatever it is that is in control. And it's been lost to time that the Father God is what it's like. It's not what it is. It never used to mean that there's a thing in the sky that acts as a daddy, or even a mommy, which is what the pagan religions would do, discounting the Greco-Roman mythologies. I mean, more like the Wicca kind of things. The Father's there, the Mother's there, there's intelligence in the universe, that's how we're doing this. It's not manifest as one in the sense that we understand. It's all manifest as one, as in there's the totality of the universe. And again, we cannot separate, what is beyond, truly beyond what we can ever possibly fathom. That stuff that is outside of that is still inside of the entirety. That is still part of the universe, which is what we really mean by God. And I hope you understand that I cannot reinforce your side unless I represent your side, and vice versa. So I'm not picking sides. You cannot be without each other. Please recognize this. You are both going to win eventually. You are both going to lose eventually. Hell, maybe you might do both at the same time, for the same reason, and for the same benefit or loss. But you will come back. And I'm not going to do much clarification like I did in the other video. I know I've done plenty of that already, but I've already done the same type of clarification for exactly the same thing in the other video. Don't forget yourselves. Don't forget what you're talking about, what your core values are. Keep going. Do it. One of you is going to lose. One of you will be the victor. And then it will flip. Don't forget that. This too shall pass. For good or for bad, for better or for worse. However you want to put that. And I mean for the good or for the bad and for better or for worse. Keep going. Don't forget yourselves in the silliness that this game sits in. Now, again, I'm an atheist. I'm not a Christian of any kind, and I'll go into the Catholic versus Christian, which is the same thing, but they separate themselves based on language, and you can't be a Christian unless you come from being a Catholic, unless you have a Catholic background as far as the history of your beliefs go. And the pagans, and you know the arguments. You should know the arguments if you're still a viewer at this point. But I am on your side. the way I meant in the beginning of the video, the way I meant in the last video, and in both videos, especially the first video, I meant both sides, but I don't think I was clear enough in the last video that I'm on both sides. As a one of the dearest persons that I've recently discovered in my life has specifically stated, and they meant this in every way possible, that Baphomet statue was absolutely beautiful. A piece of artwork, yes, as far as the beauty of the thing goes. The message that it sends, in and of itself, goes absolute beauty. And the things that it points out, regardless of what you believe, absolute beauty. And whatever the core truth is what most people are missing. They're saying, again, like I said in the last video, they're saying nothing different than what those 10 commandments on the court steps will say. Again, empower yourself, trust in nature. That's not to say don't plan. That's not to say don't take care. And I mean care in this. Care and worry mean the same thing. They do. They literally mean the same thing. But we've used them differently, which obviously changes the definition. That's the lexicographic argument. But it's literally true. There's no reason that you all shouldn't exist side by side. You deserve that. You have equally strong arguments. Some of your arguments are negated by the other side and vice versa. And we can go into how much that depends on point of view, but objectively, you're going to find the differences, but that's more of the same thing I just said that I wasn't going to do, so philosophy. Keep going. Like I said last time, keep going. You're right. You deserve to have the time. And I don't mean you, the devil. I'm not talking to Satan. Don't forget, you're the devil, and you are God. Equal parts. And yes, you, the one that's watching right now. Equal parts. Don't forget it. That's how you, that's why we're here. Again, that's why we're here. Otherwise you would neither feel so convicted or feel so torn. You either feel convicted or you feel torn, or you don't care but you care at least enough to see what's going on. Otherwise you're a stone. And you're not a stone. Because a stone don't care. And you obviously do at least enough to watch enough of this video to cut it off way before this point. I'm not tired, I'm not bored, it's just tiresome. And not in a negative way. There is no such thing as good and evil as far as a universally objective thing goes. Like I said before, it's based on what's good for you and the people who surround you. Otherwise, whoever you are, with the exceptional few, so Anyway, I've dragged this on for 15 minutes longer than I hoped that I would, but that shows that on some level, probably just in here, that it is pertinent. And that being said, it's obvious that it's pertinent to me that I be clear on what I mean. I'm not on either side. I'm telling you, you being both sides, that it is 100% necessary for you to recognize each other. And again, proponents of the statue, rather, keep fighting against really disequality, and moreover, primacy over your suppressors. Also, proponents of I keep saying the Ten Commandments, but what I really mean is the opposers of that statue, and they're going to be basically based on the Ten Commandments and I know I specifically talked about the King James or authorized version of the Bible before, but it's beyond that. It's, you know, whoever holds that idea of that entity we will call Baphomet to be negative or unnecessary or in fact truly evil. Keep fighting that good fight. And I'm only using your language because it's the language you use. Keep fighting against Baphomet. Keep fighting against the big bearded man in the sky. Obviously I'm talking to the Baphometians. It will be a sad day if you find a way to to find equality within each other and unite in a mutually positive way. And at the same time forget yourselves. To realize that you are opposite poles of the same magnet. You can cut yourselves in half. Divide yourselves as much as you want to. But what are you going to do? You're going to create two norths and two souths. You will create factions within each other, which has already been done, as you well know. I'm not saying, you know, as a cold, hard, I'm going to use the word demand because I'm the one speaking and asking you to do or to not do. I'm not saying don't create the factions, per se. I'm saying do not lose sight of why you are against each other, whether it's good versus evil, or humanism versus preference for the comfort of the human race. And that's not the same thing. If we can see a place to make a distinction, it's not because we invented it. Although we did, but it's there, and we've recognized it, and then we've accepted that and acknowledged that. But we, pretty much all of us, neglect and have forgotten that we're not separate. We're not. And I don't mean this in the context from which I began the video at all. We're not separate, though. You know, the most beautiful example I can think of is that women sync up with each other when they live together. Yet, they're in competition. I mean, no different than men. I mean, our voices will start to match, our walking patterns will match, and our attitudes will match each other in an opposite way that allows for competition that might be favorable to a favored female. You know, that's how that works. I mean, I'm sure you might notice on some level, you've mirrored yourself enough to me to where you've blinked your eyes every time that I have. That's what we do. That's what any living thing does. It has the ability to understand the thing with which it's trying to study. And I'm studying you. And I see. I'm not looking at myself. You can't look at yourself in that way. That's what we need others for, and which is, again, the point of this entire clarifier. Don't tear the statue down. Don't tear the commandments down. Don't try and replace, modify, unless you want to go back to original language, which I would back you on. As long as you who are trying to do that understands what you're doing and are at least willing to help the people who don't understand to truly understand without your bias. And the point that I really tried to make in the last video was those who were demanding that statue be torn down have become the entity that rock represents. I don't think it's coincidence that I'm using the word rock, and it's not. It wasn't planned, but it was intentional. The rock on which the church stands is something that is not part of the church itself, so to speak. But God isn't anything. God is the negative space. God is literally, by definition, nothing. And by that, since we're saying the universe and everything within it, what the Father aspect of the monotheistic idea or ideal is negative space. The allowance for other things to be. Now, that's just a patriarchal idea. That same idea translates into Mother Nature, the goddess. It is no different, but there's different understandings, and ego helps take those understandings to asinine levels. I mean, one wants to say astronomical levels, but it's asinine levels. Very, very small. Very, very petty. Very, very egocentric states. They're the same thing. It's the negative space which allows for being, which is what the fiat is. The Mother and the Father and the Son. Fiat. Let it be. According to your will, as it were, or would be. But that statue is not a Trojan horse. It is a real message. They have a real point. We have a real point. Keep in mind I'm saying we. For the Baphometers, including myself. I'm also saying we in the last video and in this video, as in the ones who are against that. Again, that should reduce itself down to a realization that I'm on both sides. I'm not saying they're equal, because they're not. They're opposites of the same spectrum. And I'm not calling one personally good over the other. Because of, like I said before, the lion, the cubs, me, and they're both evil as far as they don't propagate what would be beneficial for at least their bloodline. But don't overinflate your entitlements. You're entitled, but not the thing you're arguing for. Neither of you, neither side, is entitled to the perception of what you're arguing for. And I don't mean that you don't know what you mean. I mean that the idea behind the ideal is going to take over. And it already has. That's why I'm making this video, this second video. If you lose sight of what you're doing, you should have the ability to turn around and go, oh, there's that thing that the court agreed upon, and then argue against it, fight against it. Let's get a little darker. If you want to commit suicide, and I mean that, if you want to take your own fucking life, I am all for that. If, I'll go back to some biblical things here. It's said to pray in your closet rather than out in the open or in public. That doesn't mean that you should not pray in front of anybody. What that means is you should be doing it from within the chambers of your own heart, rather than for how it might look to God, how pleasing it might seem to God. It should come from the core of your heart, the very chambers that your blood courses through, rather than what God might like. So the rituals and all this shit that prevents you from being you and true to God, whichever God that might be, meaning whichever thing that you hold most dear in your heart. You can have that be your God, and you can have that be your God. They're both images of a concept that we can't fully perceive, so that's an idol. Either direction. So you're wrong if you're doing that. And even that obviously falls short by its very nature. It being what I'm saying right now falls short by its very nature. Pray in the closet, not in public, not in the marketplace. Make sure you are truly giving your soul to what you are. Whatever you define your soul to be, we're not going to get into that, but I know I didn't even have to clear that up. Both sides of this argument, please, please, please ensure that you're being true to what you're saying and that you're not doing this for show. Whether it's for show, up or down, and that doesn't mean anything. I'm just Baphomet's hell tends to be down, heaven tends to be up. Don't throw yourself into one of the truest forms of hell, which is insanity. And insanity is not knowing the difference between anything fake and anything real that's really worth distinguishing. Otherwise, there's nothing worth fighting for as far as what you're trying to fight for, and also against. Don't lose yourself within yourself. If you have a fight to fight, make sure you know what you're fighting for, and that you don't lose it, even if it's especially if you are the source of that idea. Now back to the suicide thing. Again, praying in the closet, praying in the marketplace. People who want to commit suicide a lot of times are just doing it to hurt somebody else, regardless of whether or not it stops their pain. Now, I cannot get behind that. If things are so grim that the only way out is to get the fuck out, I'm with you. I'm not encouraging it. I will cry if it happens. And I don't mean that in the way that people are demanded to cry in North Korea when the leader dies. I will mourn the loss of you. And I will sit there through the suffering of your decision. I get it. But only if you are being true to yourself. If you're doing it for, oh, Daddy hates me and this is going to teach him a lesson, or boyfriend or husband or wife has just ruined my life and this is how they're going to learn and how I'm going to end my pain. No. You're lying to everybody. If it's truly the only way out, I'm with you. As horrifying as it would be for me, I'd hold your hand right through it, whatever method you chose. And this, I hope, reinforces what I'm trying to say as far as both sides. If any side trying to eliminate the other side is suicide. You know, Su is you, suicide, you-icide, self-killing. Also, I'm sorry, yo is you, at least with Spanish, yo is you, and tu is, yo is I, rather, tu is you. I misspoke when I said you, meaning, you know what I mean, forget it. I'm overthinking that. don't kill yourself for the wrong reason. And whether that's through effort or through loss, disintegration of an attempt of an organization. And God, this is tiring. I want for nothing more than to make everything okay. But if I had the power to do that, I would do nothing more than what I'm doing right now. I would rage against that. I would loathe that ability. Because we would all lose ourselves in equality. And I mean that in a loss of the sense of the self that can observe objectively. And even if that went that way positively for a while, meaning without destroying ourselves, our very nature is to blow it up when it doesn't work anymore. Because we need that tension to feel alive. And many times that tension is nearly too hard to handle. And the best, most beautiful example I can think of, and I've tried and I've tried and I've tried to come up with a better example, and this relates to death. We are all going to feel the pain of death. It doesn't mean you pass away in your sleep. You have a heart attack and you die. The best way you can go out is to be shot in the head without knowing it. Without knowing that it's going to happen. And having it be instantaneously over. Now, to point out the beauty / horror of what I'm talking about, think of the scene in the scene in Inception, where the couple is lying their head against the train track, and she is in full panic, and he is just as scared as her, but he knows everything is going to be fucking-K. But they're at that point where everything within them and outside of them is just shattered to pieces. And even though he knows everything is going to be okay, he's doing nothing but lying to her because it's not fucking okay. It's over. It's done. But it's not. That unnameable sensation is totally necessary. It is pure fear and pure... There's not a name for that. There's no sufficient name for it. Even fear falls short for that side of it, but it is pure abandon and pure acceptance is what that is. And that's because of the lack of choice. And that's because they're doing what's next. Because they can't help it. This raising of the statue and the fight against it and the fight for it is Game of Thrones. Must needs be there. It is of necessity, in and of itself, that spectrum to be there. It's unavoidable. We can't fight against it, like I keep saying. So, go ahead and fight against it. You're gonna fucking lose, and the other side will win. And it will flip. Even better, lose yourself in the argument, but don't lose sight of the fight that you're fighting. And you will lose sight of that, most of you. Most of you will come back. And the ones who don't, whether for better or for worse, I'm talking about both sides here, it'll be for your benefit. And if we come to a neutrality, an agreement, an armistice, well, not armistice is temporary, an agreement, then both sides will have completed their goals. In coming to, again, the trust in nature, the trust in self, and the recognition of, let's go Shakespeare, The Fault in Our Stars. It's not Shakespeare, but you know what I mean. It's off Shakespeare. Oh, so is this thing, by the way. No, that's unimportant. Don't forget that you're only human. And you're made in the image and likeness. And that doesn't mean that you're made in the same physical form, likeness being the physical form, and the image meaning the ideal. All that means is you're made in the image and likeness. That means you are made within that image and likeness. You are within the beatific vision, the image and likeness. You are constructed of the elements of the universe. You're made within the beatific vision and constructed of it. You're it. You're made within it, and you are the totality of it. And you are its worst evils, and you are its best goods. And none of those words, good or evil, mean anything except for what we've made of it, because we've spoken that into existence. And then we fight against that fact, and then fight against that in so many different levels that neither the true meaning of either devil or God exists anymore for most people, especially the ones who are going to be watching this video, with the exceptions of, that are there. And we don't have to point out the exceptions, because the exceptions are not the exceptions. They're anomalies within the general rule. Which is what an exception is, but you know what I mean. Don't forget who you truly are. And don't forget that you do not know who the fuck you are on any level. At all. I mean, otherwise, why would you do things that you don't want to do and don't like to do? And why would you do things, why would you not do things that you have built into you? That I would do, I do not. That I would not do, I do. All that means, would, means want. Wish. The things that I don't really want to do are the things I do. And the things I really don't want to do are the things that I do. That's what that means. But we forget that. We do. And I had a pretty good idea that would run way over the amount of time that I would have liked to go on, but I don't plan. I don't script. I do what's next. I do what's next, with no plan for what I'm saying, much less going to say later. I'm not saying you should do that, and I'm not saying that I do it because the Bible says so, which, don't forget, we're missing. We have only included a few out of over 100 or 200 books within that Bible. In fact, we have a few different things that it looks like Jesus wrote down. If we're going the same route that St. Paul wrote those books, even though they were written long after his death, and the same thing with all the other Gospels. If we're counting those things as things that they written, even though they would have been written at the end of their lives and probably way further after, well, then we also have things that Jesus wrote and that Judas wrote and Thomas wrote and all that stuff. And it's necessary to point out that I cannot talk about the thing that I mean to talk about unless I point out its opposite. You can't talk about existence unless you talk about the lack thereof. Again, the whole point of this whole argument. We need opposing sides. And we can't escape them because that's how we are. Yeah, I will use that. Let's assume we have the original, whatever smallest form of life you want to come up with. We have the original, and we know that splits to create itself, to propagate itself. Well, just the fact that they're sitting together next to each other, rather, they're having different experiences because they're not in the same place, much less in the same time. So you're going to get a split. They're going to have different effects on different sides, but you're going to wind up with something that splits. And that's going to be affected on different sides, and it's going to split. It will either fail to continue to progress, or we can sit here and talk about this on this video. There's only two ways about it. Don't fight progress. And don't progress forward in a way that prevents the thing that you're trying to progress toward. And I know that's so cyclic and it's true. And don't fight against yourself or yourselves as far as the self-same interest group goes. Also, if you're going to fight against the opposite group, don't do it to the point where you kill yourselves in order to win. That's what the Cold War was, and still is. It's just nuclear arms now, rather than it's the mistrust of everybody that has nuclear arms, rather than just that one guy. That guy being Russia years ago. Anyway, you know what I mean. I've worn myself out now. Like I've said for, what is it? Almost 2 hours now, given the total of both videos. Oh, it's actually over 2 hours now, but anyway. don't kid yourselves into an early grave. And I mean that sociologically. You know, a statue's not going to kill you. It's not evil. It's not going to cause some unholy that kills all Satanists, or, you know, you're not going to find a prayer that goes to the statue that goes and then steals your soul, or would even induce the end times. That's not how that works. If that was how it works, every doomsday date prediction would have been true. That could have only happened once, by nature, by the nature of that beast. All of you have to save yourselves. And we cannot save, you cannot save yourself. And we cannot save ourselves unless we grasp hold of each other to raise ourselves up. Some people don't like when you use examples from nature, but we're part of that. We are that, and that's where we came from. Leaning on each other to lift ourselves up is a very fundamental thing. I mean, if you want to look at ants, they will cross entire spans by doing nothing more than clamping onto each other. Like, I bite your leg, and then your leg is wrapped around their arm, and so you bite the big toe of the big dude 3 bodies down. It's a big bridge, you know? Don't get greedy enough to where don't fool yourself by way of greed or xenophobia or necessity for individualism yet, which would lead into prideful, or it would lead to self-bolstering. It would also, again, like I said in the other video, either way you cut it, if it goes too far, it's going to collapse and you're going to cause a revolution, if not at least a dissolution. Be careless. Be free. Let your hair down for a while, for at least a little while, or forever. See what works best for you. But do not try and kill the man in the mirror. Don't do it. You're gonna regret it. But if you feel you have to, go ahead and do it. You may not. If you feel you have to, you're not gonna regret it, because you only regret the things you don't do. But rest assured that will be your peak, and that will be their trough, and it will fucking flip. Whichever side you're on. If you're doing it for your sake, be very, very, very careful not to fuck up what you're trying to do if you're feeding your ego. If you don't care, again, just like with the guy feeding the ego, go for it. Fuck it up. Do your thing. But you're gonna do what the singular selfish person did, rather than the group. I tried to imply a group. Don't kill the many for the one. Don't do it. Because you'll be... Now that's really fucking... It's really fucking... Because you'll be alone. You will. And you'll lose sight of who you are when you're alone. Recognize yourself in the other. Namaskaram. Namaste. Same thing. Just different regions. I recognize the divine. I recognize you. What that means is I recognize the divine within you. That thing that we share that is beyond the thing that we can define. Recognize the divine, the beatific vision that is in everyone and everything else. You're not separate from it in any way. Don't forget that. Do not neglect that. We all do. And it's always to our detriment. And a lot of times that leads to our uprising. Not every time, because sometimes there's a time to reap. Sometimes it takes a Baphomet. Sometimes it takes an Elohim. Both of those fall short. Those names fall short. Those characters fall short. But don't give them undue power. Don't worship the cross. Don't worship the Baphomet. Realize and attempt to understand what they represent and what those higher truths are. You have the eyes to see. You have the ears to hear. Stop blocking them with your own personal garbage. Stop giving power to pieces of nailed wood and a goat dude. Stop it. Stop it. But then, as I said before, it's in you. So follow whatever it is. Follow that is in you. Follow it. I don't care if it's the demand for the destruction of all that is capitalist, which is what would allow you to be a Baphomet worshiper and putter-upper in Arkansas in the first place. Don't stop fighting against it. But for your own sake, don't kill it. The best drama, the best mode for the progression is for the bad guy to be in a constant state of losing. Again, I'm quoting Alan Watts here. But to be in a constant state of losing, but never have lost. And the winner should be in a constant state of winning, but never actually win. When you do that, you've made the game neutral. And it, by itself, will birth a new game. And game doesn't mean fun. It means a system of challenges. That's what will happen. Again, don't be afraid. Don't stop fighting. But don't keep fighting foolishly. You're devil enough for you are devil enough in and of yourself to be where you're at right now. Don't deny, don't try and deflect away. It's best to integrate that negative into that positive and neutral thing that we all accept about ourselves. Most of us accept about ourselves. Take that negative side. Make it yours. Otherwise, how can you be a complete person? There's no such thing as a complete person, but we cannot take one of those necessary steps if we don't acknowledge that it's there and integrate it to us. Can't. As I said before, I love you. All of you. Truly from the pit of my soul. Recognize each other. You know? Recognize each other. Namaskaram.